I want to go over a quick review of the Yongnuo YN-560. In this video I'm also going to do a little bit of a comparison between this flash and Canon's top flash, the 600EX RT. Now the purpose of this comparison isn't to test them out as on-camera flashes, rather it's to test them as off-camera slaves and how they function. Yongnuo has recently released the YN-560 and the only difference between this one and the version 3 is they've added RT capabilities just like Canon has with the 600, and they can be used in conjunction with their 602 and 603 radio triggers, I believe. Other than that, virtually identical to this one, and there's a $10 price difference, I think, so still very cheap. Now they also have, I believe they have more than two, but the two main TTL flashes that Yongnuo carries is the 565EX and the 568EX. And the real benefit to having the TTL flashes, aside from TTL, which I don't really use, is that if you use a Canon system, you can control the flash output power from the back of your screen. Now you don't have to go around to every single flash that you have set up and change them all individually. You can go into the back and change each individual group, which is a huge time saver. And if you use a softbox like a Westcott Apollo like I do, they're kind of difficult to get inside to change the flash power. And to be able to do that from the back of a camera is very, very handy. In fact, sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 of these with one of them being a TTL flash. So I'll have these set at full power, and then I'll put my TTL flash, and then I'll just scroll up and down from low power to full power on the TTL, and it gives me a bit of range. Whereas if I had all TTL in there, it would just make it so much easier. One of the things that attracted to me to this flash, well, aside from the price, is the fact that they have an optical trigger built into them. Now what this means is anytime I get a burst of light, this optical eye will pick up that burst and fire itself. It's extremely sensitive, and in fact I'll show you, and it works like a charm. It's really, really good. Now you don't have to go out and buy extra triggers when you use these. That being said, you have to be in line of sight. If you've got a flash around a corner, they're pretty good at detecting bounce light, but still you could run into issues. So we'll go ahead and turn this on. Got to make sure it's set up to one of the slave modes. And turn this one on, fire it from pilot. Very sensitive. Don't even have to flash it out. The bounce is good enough. I could even fire it into myself. They work great. Every time, never had a problem with it. I'd even taken it outside, broad daylight, roughly about 100 feet away, and I was firing that on 1/64th power, and this was still going off every single time. Now, it's sort of unrealistic. I'm not going to be triggering a single Speedlite from 100 feet away in broad daylight. It's not going to do a thing, but I know it works. So, price comparison between them. Speaking Canadian dollars, $70 for the YN-560. I believe the version 3 is $80. And the 565EX, which is one of the TTLs, is roughly about $150, I believe, and it'll go up to $170 for the 568EX. Now, while the TTL Yongnuos are a bit more, they're still a very good deal, considering when the top flash from Canon costs you $600. Even the 430EX2s, which don't hold a candle to these Yongnuos, they're still, I think, between $300 and $400, and I might be very generous by saying as low as $300. So very, very good deal. But we'll take a look at the samples that I've collected in the studio, and we'll see what we get. Now I have both the YN-562 and the Canon 600 EXRT sitting here side by side, and one of the main differences is the build quality and the weather sealing of the Canon. And you can see right there where it has a rubberized foot which will complete the weather sealing to the camera body. Also the Canon 600 EX is a little bit taller. I think the reason for that is it will zoom as low as 20 millimeters all the way up to 200 millimeters. So you'll see the Canon has a switch for on and off, and the Yongnuo you actually have to press and hold on the on off, wait for it to cycle through until it's completely finished. You can cycle through the modes, the two slaves, and the multi-mode. And you'll see here that the Canon has quite a few modes, which I won't go into because this review is primarily for the 560. Change the flash power, you push a button and you have the scroll wheel to go back and forth from 1/28 to full power. The YN-560, the left and right go full stops, where up and down go third stops. It is quite a bit quicker and easier to do. Button zooms from 24 millimeters up to 105, and the Canon 600 EX, again you have to push a button first and then you scroll from 20 millimeters and you pass 105 and you'll get to 135 and 200. So you get 3 more options. Now moving on to the recycling test, I'm going to turn them both on and I'm going to set them both to full power and see what we get. Anything less than full power on both these Speedlites is going to be pretty quick with the recycling time, and it's not going to make really much of a difference. First test here, I pushed the pilot light on the YN-562 a little bit late. They are pretty stiff, so the next 2 ones will be the real deal. You can see here that the YN-562 does recycle quite a bit faster in full power. Alright, here we are. We're going to test the flash output consistency on both the Yongnuo and the Canon. We're going to start off at full power on the Yongnuo YN-562, and from there we're going to go down to 1/8 power and down to 1/128 and see what sort of output and consistency we get. Both these flash units will be at 24 millimeters for this test. So we'll get started. I will add that the light meter is marked underneath the frame and it stays in the same position the whole time. So 5 shots and it remained bang on at 16.9. Back down to 1/8 power. Again, bang on, 5.6 and 7/10. Go down to 1/128 power. There was 1/10 there, a bit of a dip. Still pretty consistent. So we'll turn that off and we'll get the Canon 600 EXRT started up and plugged in. So again, we're going to start off at full power and see what we get. A tenth lower than the Yongnuo. I believe that was my error, so we'll start over. 16.8 goes down a tenth, back up, and I believe it dips again, 2/10 down. So not quite as consistent. How much leeway you like is entirely up to you. I know of some people who were really fussy, and 1/10 of a stop is a big deal. Others may go 2-3 tenths and not be overly concerned. So pretty consistent, only off by 1/10 of a stop on the last two. Last time at 1/128th. F2 and 1/10, down to 1/10. And again, pretty consistent. However, I think the Yongnuos proved to be quite a bit more consistent in full power, and just a little bit more in 1/8 power and 1/28th. For this last test, I wanted to see what the light throw difference was between the two speed lights, and to see if there is any change in color temperature. I kept the light stand stationary for both, and when I was done with the Yongnuo, I just simply popped it off and threw the Canon 600 RT on there. As you can see, there is a little bit of a difference. The Canon appears to have more light throw at 24mm, and it seems to have the biggest difference on the right hand side on both. You can see that both seem to be a little more lopsided, but the Canon seems to have more coverage. Moving on to 50mm, they appear pretty even. Biggest difference that I see is the Canon seems to be closer to more of a hard edge with the light, whereas the Yongnuo's light seems to fade more or taper. But generally look pretty equal. Again, slight edge to Canon, I would think. And you can see quite a bit of a shape difference here. The taper seems to be about the same between the light and shadow, but whereas the Yongnuo is more of a rectangle, the Canon has a bit of an odd shape. I don't know if that makes a big difference to you. For me, I'm either bouncing into a softbox or an umbrella anyways, so no big deal. But for anybody who's interested, this is what it looks like. Now for the color temperature, it does appear a bit different. Now these were metered to be bang on to the flash, so what you see is what you get. These are unedited RAWs converted straight to JPEG with no adjustments done to them whatsoever. So one more thing I'd like to add is that when I was researching these online before I went ahead and purchased them, I was seeing a lot of posts on reviews and forums about these Yongnuos being unreliable, and it did worry me a little bit, but you know, the amount of reviews was relatively small to the positive ones I saw, and at $70 for a single Speedlite, I decided to take the plunge and see what I get. So I ordered two, and I haven't had a single problem with them yet. I use them all the time. They're fantastic. Now I do have a theory on why they may not be working for a lot of people. It's when you get them inside the battery compartment, there's going to be a little silica packet and this little yellow warning label. When I opened this up, I pulled this out and just about chucked it myself. Something in the back of my head was telling me to pick this bright yellow tab up and actually take a look at it. And it will actually tell you what type of batteries that you can use and you can't use. Just keep it simple. The two types of batteries they tell you to use are alkaline and nickel metal hydride. they're not going to work if you use anything else, and if they do, it's probably not going to be good for the flash unit. So make sure you get the right type of batteries and you use them. So if you are looking for any of these Yongnuos, be careful. I've seen on Amazon, I think, selling Speedlites, these for about $50, I think. And in the ad, they don't mention Yongnuo anywhere. You can clearly see from the picture that it is a Yongnuo, with the exception of they've done a terrible job at photoshopping the Yongnuo logo out of the front and the back on the head of the Speedlite here. And their motive behind doing that left me a little concerned. So, you know, they're cheap enough. Make sure you buy from a reputable dealer. You can order directly from Yongnuo at yongnuostore.com, and you can find them all over eBay. Again, make sure you find a reputable dealer. I think I typically don't go below a 98% approval rate. I read some of the reviews and see what they have to say. Some people have unrealistic reviews and they're just terrible. But yeah, I typically go for 98% and up. There's lots of them out there, and I got mine from Hong Kong. 2 weeks in the mail, I think, so they came relatively quickly from that distance. I can't get stuff from halfway across Canada in that time, so really good. Now, these may not have the durability and the weather sealing like some of the high-end flashes, the 600 and the 910 from Nikon. But, you know, that being said, they're still very strong. If I dropped one of these, I wouldn't be overly concerned. If I did break it, I've gotten a lot of use out of them. They're only $70. I wouldn't have a problem with ordering more, and I wouldn't be the least bit upset. So, great product, highly recommended. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about them, pros or cons, and feel free to comment. Take care.